For 7 relentless years, a dedicated team of scientists, military contractors, and data analysts has laid siege to an isolated 512-acre parcel of land tucked into the high desert of Utah's Uinta Basin. They came armed with mobile radar units, quantum magnetometers, military-grade thermal sensors, and high-energy laser arrays, operating under a single deceptive premise: that whatever was haunting Skinwalker Ranch was an elusive transient atmospheric anomaly passing through our sky. But as Season 7 reaches its dramatic crescendo in Episode 14, titled Top Secrets, that founding premise has completely shattered. The investigation has arrived at an inescapable, terrifying crossroad. The team is no longer asking what is visiting the valley. They are confronting a reality where high-level government officials, sitting members of Congress, and intelligence operatives are stepping into the command center to evaluate data that challenges our fundamental understanding of national security, planetary physics, and human history. The opening moments of Episode 14 do not waste time with comfortable summaries. The air inside the nerve center of the ranch is thick with tension. Dr. Travis Taylor, Chief Scientist Erik Bard, Superintendent Thomas Winterton, and Principal Owner Brandon Fugal gather around the central display monitors. They aren't looking at blurry photographs or listening to secondhand local folklore. Projected on the screens are precise, multi-layered data maps representing hundreds of hours of coordinated multispectral field testing. To understand how the investigation reached this critical breaking point, one must look at the escalating trajectory of Season 7. The team pushed their equipment past engineered limits, forcing the phenomenon out of the shadows through aggressive, multivariable stimulation. They didn't just observe, they poked the nest. When they launched a coordinated swarm of 100 LED-equipped autonomous drones into the airspace directly above the infamous Triangle sector, the results defied standard aerodynamic laws. Doppler radar arrays and LiDAR telemetry captured the swarm hitting an invisible, localized wall suspended precisely 5,000 feet in the air, a physical threshold the team now officially designates as the bubble. Drones navigating around this localized boundary experienced sudden, catastrophic battery drains, localized GPS spoofing that displaced their coordinates by hundreds of miles, and mechanical thrust failures that sent multi-rotor craft plunging into the sagebrush below. Simultaneously, the deep-core drilling operations along the base of the massive sandstone mesa brought up physical evidence that transformed a skywatch into a subterranean investigation. Diamond-tipped drill bit, designed to slice through granite and dense bedrock, ground to a halt against an impenetrable, ultra-dense layer buried deep within the rock strata. When the drill core was extracted and subjected to high-temperature elemental analysis, the results sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Embedded deep inside the natural geological layers was a non-conductive engineered ceramic metallic matrix, a synthetic composite composed of exotic ratios of titanium, aluminum, and rare earth elements that do not occur naturally in combined terrestrial strata. Yet, despite these staggering physical discoveries, one constant ghost has haunted every experiment conducted across the property: the persistence of the 1.6 GHz radio signal. Whether the team fires high-powered green lasers into the night sky, launches military-grade rockets through the center of the triangle, or channels thousands of volts of electrical current directly into the ground, the spectrum analyzers immediately lock onto a pristine, high-amplitude digital signal broadcasting at 1.6 GHz. It doesn't present as random cosmic background noise or terrestrial crosstalk. It exhibits the clean, structured, mathematical architecture of an active, adaptive carrier wave. In the opening sequence of Episode 14, Erik Bard reveals a sobering correlation that elevates the stakes of the entire series. By mapping every historical 1.6 GHz signal broadcast against real-time satellite tracking data and local military airspace logs, the scientific team uncovered an undeniable pattern. The signal doesn't just broadcast randomly. It spikes in direct synchronization with the appearance of unidentified aerial phenomena and localized gravitational anomalies. As the primary team sits in the quiet darkness of the command center reviewing these overlaid charts, the atmosphere shifts from scientific curiosity to heavy anticipation. They know that the data sitting on their drives can no longer be contained within private research logs. Brandon Fugal steps to the front of the room to announce an unprecedented arrival. Dust kicks up along the long dirt driveway leading to the ranch gates as a convoy of black SUVs approaches the perimeter. Sitting inside those vehicles are high-ranking political figures, including a U.S. congressman and strategic intelligence advisors, arriving at Skinwalker Ranch for an official, closed-door classified briefing. The era of passive observation is officially over. The moment for high-stakes disclosure has arrived. The arrival of the Congressional delegation at the main gate of Skinwalker Ranch signals a profound shift in how the mystery of the Uinta Basin is handled. For decades, the federal government maintained a posture of strict official distance regarding the property, even as private intelligence contractors and shadowy programs like the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program quietly funded research behind closed doors. Now, as the black SUVs park outside the command center, the dynamic turns completely transparent. Sitting members of the United States House of Representatives and senior intelligence advisors walk through the door, stepping out of the political theater of Washington, D.C., and directly into the heart of a live scientific investigation. Inside the command center, the atmosphere is focused and quiet. Travis Taylor, drawing on his background as a former chief scientist for the government's UAP task force, takes his place at the head of the briefing table. Beside him, Erik Bard pulls up encrypted files, high-resolution 3D LiDAR renders, and multispectral telemetry logs. This is not a casual tour. It is a formal scientific debriefing on national security implications. The briefing begins with the physical evidence that cannot be explained away by natural phenomena or optical illusions. Erik Bard projects the three-dimensional volumetric maps generated by the 100-drone swarm experiment onto the primary displays. The political delegation watches as point cloud data clearly illustrates the bubble, a well-defined, dome-like atmospheric anomaly floating 5,000 feet directly above the triangle sector. The telemetry shows that when military-grade sensors and civilian drones cross this threshold, standard physics appear to buckle. Signal propagation delays spike, onboard gyroscopes register false rotational forces, and telemetry systems report localized gravitational shifts that defy atmospheric modeling. Taylor turns the focus to the tactical and military implications. He presents recorded logs of GPS spoofing events captured during rocket launches over the property. These are not simple signal dropouts or standard radio jams. The GPS telemetry received by the scientific instruments was actively manipulated, shifting the registered position of ground equipment by dozens of miles into the surrounding mountains, while the hardware remained firmly anchored to the desert floor. In a modern defense environment where navigation, precision targeting, and national infrastructure rely heavily on GPS integrity, the presence of a localized, highly intelligent phenomenon capable of bending and manipulating radio frequencies at will poses a direct strategic challenge. The briefing deepens as the discussion transitions from the skies to the deep subterranean structure of the Mesa. Superintendent Thomas Winterton presents core samples and cross-sectional seismic tomographs obtained from deep drilling operations. The congressman leans forward as the screens display the elemental composition of the ceramic metallic composite discovered buried beneath hundreds of feet of solid rock. The high-density matrix, rich in engineered ratios of titanium, aluminum, and rare earth elements, presents a profound geological paradox. Either an advanced industrial operation took place deep within the Uinta Basin prior to modern recorded history, or an engineered object of immense scale sits encased within the natural sandstone layers of the Mesa. As the physical evidence mounts, the visiting lawmakers begin asking pointed questions regarding the origin and intent of the 1.6 GHz radio frequency. Dr. Taylor demonstrates how the signal actively responds to human activity on the surface. When the team launches a rocket, fires a high-energy laser, or initiates deep core drilling, the 1.6 GHz frequency instantly illuminates the spectrum analyzers, broadcasting a structured, multi-layered data stream that mimics modern digital telecommunications protocols. The implication is clear. The phenomenon is not a passive remnant of an ancient event. It is an active, responsive system that monitors and reacts to every move made on the property. The closed-door session concludes with a stark acknowledgement from the visiting delegation. The scientific rigor demonstrated inside the command center bridges the gap between fringe speculation and actionable congressional oversight. The data gathered at Skinwalker Ranch is no longer just fodder for television viewers. It represents empirical evidence of anomalous physics operating within domestic United States airspace. With official government interest now firmly established, Brandon Fugal and his team prepare to transition from reviewing past evidence to executing the most aggressive, high-energy experimental phase in the history of the ranch. With official congressional interest firmly established inside the command center, the energy on the property shifts from strategic reflection to immediate tactical execution. The presence of lawmakers and intelligence advisors doesn't slow the scientific momentum, it accelerates it. Brandon Fugal and Dr. Travis Taylor recognize that to fully validate the empirical data presented during the briefing, they must trigger a real-time, high-amplitude response from the phenomenon while the visitors and field equipment are fully deployed. The strategy for the next phase of Episode 14 is simple, bold, and inherently dangerous. Apply simultaneous, multi-variable pressure to every known hotspot on the 512-acre property at the exact same time. In previous seasons, the team tested the ranch in isolated, controlled steps. They would launch a single rocket over the triangle, drill a solitary borehole into the mesa, or fire an isolated laser array into the night sky. While those individual tests produced undeniable anomalies, they also allowed the phenomenon to adapt, isolate, and neutralize specific instruments. Now, the team prepares an integrated, synchronized assault on the environment designed to overwhelm localized interference and force a total system response. At the epicenter of this new operation is the Triangle Sector. Ground crews position high output, continuous wave laser cannons around the perimeter, calibrating the optics to converge at a single focal point, precisely 5,000 feet in the air, the lower boundary of the bubble. Simultaneously, heavy equipment operators move into position at the base of the Mesa, mounting a massive hydraulic core drilling rig equipped with diamond-impregnated industrial bits. The goal is to penetrate past the previous obstruction layer and extract a continuous structural core from the anomalous ceramic metallic matrix buried deep within the rock strata. To complete the multispectral trap, Chief Scientist Erik Bard coordinates the deployment of a new, highly sensitive radio frequency monitoring array across the perimeter fence lines. These specialized spectrum analyzers are retrofitted with ultra-wideband digital signal processors, capable of capturing not just the amplitude of the 1.6 GHz frequency, but its underlying phase modulation and microsecond data packet structures. If the phenomenon attempts to transmit or scramble communications during the experiment, the array will record its exact digital signature in real time. As night falls over the Uinta Basin, the command center transforms into a high-intensity control tower. Multi-screen telemetry displays show real-time thermal feeds, seismic vibrations, optical spectrum maps, and live GPS tracking for every team member in the field. Travis Taylor counts down the launch sequence over the primary radio channel. On his signal, the high-power lasers ignite, slicing through the crisp desert night and forming a brilliant green geometric crosshair in the sky directly above the triangle. Instantly, the baseline sensors begin to react. The continuous wave lasers, designed to travel through the open atmosphere in perfectly straight, uninterrupted lines, begin to bend. Optical telemetry cameras capture the intersecting light beams visibly refracting and warping as they reach the 5,000-foot threshold. It looks as if the light is striking an invisible curved lens suspended in mid-air. Simultaneously, the heavy drill rig at the Mesa engages its hydraulic drivers, driving the diamond core bit deep into the rock face. The mechanical vibration shakes the sandstone ridge, sending low-frequency seismic waves through the valley floor. Within seconds of the drill biting into the stone, the spectrum analyzers inside the command center explode with activity. The 1.6 GHz frequency doesn't just appear as a subtle pulse. It ignites across the monitors at maximum signal strength. But this time, something is radically different. The signal is no longer broadcasting as a simple, uniform carrier wave. The ultra-wideband processors reveal complex, high-speed data spikes pulsing through the frequency, a rapid, structured cascade of digital information that escalates in direct proportion to the depth of the drill bit inside the Mesa. Standing beside the monitoring racks, the visiting advisors watch as the physical world and the digital spectrum react in perfect synchronization. The ranch is no longer just answering the team's experiments. It is communicating in real time. And the barrier between the surface world and the subterranean anomaly is beginning to strain under the pressure. The sudden spike in the 1.6 GHz signal across the ultra-wideband processors creates an immediate ripple effect throughout the entire electronic infrastructure of the ranch. Inside the command center, primary monitors flicker as high-frequency electromagnetic interference leaks through shielded cables. The digital data cascade, rapid, structured, and accelerating by the second, is no longer just registering on spectrum analyzers. It is actively altering the operational behavior of the scientific hardware deployed in the field. At the base of the Mesa, the drill crew experiences the first physical impact of this electromagnetic surge. As the diamond-tipped core bit reaches deep into the rock strata toward the high-density ceramic matrix, the heavy industrial diesel engine powering the rig suffers a sudden, unexplainable drop in torque. Mechanical gauges register maximum hydraulic pressure, yet the rotary drill string grinds to a complete standstill, locked tight against the subterranean obstruction. Simultaneously, the crew's handheld radio units erupt into a chaotic wall of static, forcing Superintendent Thomas Winterton to signal the operator to halt the machinery manually before the structural steel breaks under the stress. Thermal imaging cameras pointed directly at the borehole capture a baffling thermodynamic anomaly. Despite the friction generated by hundreds of horsepower grinding against solid bedrock, the core barrel is not hot. Instead, infrared optics reveal the temperature surrounding the drill head dropping rapidly, shedding heat into the surrounding mountain and turning blue on the thermal spectrum displays. The stone inside the mesa appears to be acting as a thermal heat sink, rapidly absorbing mechanical energy and dissipating it into the surrounding bedrock. Meanwhile, at the triangle, the convergent laser experiment hits a critical tipping point. The green laser beams, intersecting precisely at the 5,000-foot mark within the bubble, begin to flicker and distort as if passing through thick, turbulent water. Optical tracking cameras record localized shimmering along the light pathways, creating a distinct circular distortion ring in the night sky. Upward-facing weather sensors deployed near the laser launch pads register a localized pressure wave, a sudden, sharp spike in microbarometric pressure that drops back to baseline within fractions of a second, exactly matching the rhythmic pulses of the 1.6 GHz radio frequency. Inside the command center, Dr. Travis Taylor tracks the spatial relationship between the two simultaneous field events. By laying the real-time seismic telemetry from the Mesa directly over the optical distortion data gathered at the triangle, he uncovers a striking geometric correlation. The thermal drop deep within the Mesa and the optical refraction occurring 5,000 feet in the air are connected by an invisible linear axis. A vector drawn from the deep core borehole, straight through the Mesa, passes directly through the focal point of the laser beams suspended over the triangle. The two distinct hotspots on the property are not isolated phenomena. They are two surface nodes of a single, continuous, highly integrated structural field. As the visiting congressional delegation and intelligence advisors watch the live diagnostic maps update, the theoretical models fall away. The data demonstrates that whenever human activity disturbs the subterranean matrix at the Mesa, a corresponding atmospheric reaction manifests above the triangle. The phenomenon operates like an interconnected circuit board, distributing thermal, kinetic, and electromagnetic stress across its perimeter in real time. Recognizing that the simultaneous stimulation of the Mesa and the triangle has successfully forced the system into an active state, Dr. Taylor and Erik Bard make a strategic decision to push the experiment even further. Rather than backing down as the interference escalates, they prepare to deploy an advanced high-altitude atmospheric probe directly into the center of the optical distortion ring, setting up a high-stakes, direct sampling of the spatial anomaly before the localized window closes. The decision to launch an atmospheric probe directly into the optical distortion ring above the triangle marks a bold turn in the scientific methodology at Skinwalker Ranch. The team is no longer content to simply record secondary emissions from the ground. They are reaching up and physically tapping into the bubble, while it is in an active, stimulated state. Ground crews quickly assemble a specialized heavy payload telemetry rocket on the launch pad at the center of the triangle. Suspended beneath the nose cone is a custom-engineered sensor package containing micromagnetometers, high-speed thermal couplers, a radiation counter, and an independent, hardened 1.6 GHz transponder. This payload is designed to transmit real-time telemetry back to the command center even if the rocket loses structural integrity or experiences total main bus electrical failure. As final checks are completed on the pad, the environmental conditions around the launch site turn unnaturally still. The desert wind that typically sweeps across the basin drops to absolute zero. On the spectrum monitors inside the command center, the baseline radio frequency background flattens, leaving only the pristine, high-amplitude 1.6 GHz signal pulsing across the display like a digital heartbeat. Dr. Travis Taylor initiates the automated launch sequence over the comms channel. Countdown reaches 0, and the rocket ignites, tearing into the night sky on a bright column of solid fuel flame. High-speed optical tracking cameras follow the rocket's trajectory as it ascends straight toward the green crosshairs formed by the convergent laser cannons. For the first 4,000 feet of ascent, flight dynamics remain within standard operational margins. Velocity, acceleration, and airframe stability mirror predicted flight paths perfectly. But the moment the payload crosses the 4,900-foot mark and enters the lower threshold of the bubble, the rocket's behavior alters drastically. On the tracking displays, the rocket's telemetry stream undergoes a sudden, violent transformation. Rather than experiencing smooth, continuous atmospheric drag, the onboard accelerometers register a massive, instantaneous deceleration spike, not from physical impact, but as if the craft had suddenly entered a medium with radically altered fluid density. Simultaneously, the vehicle's primary electrical bus suffers a total voltage collapse. Onboard digital cameras go dark instantly, and the primary guidance computer ceases transmission. However, the independent hardened payload transponder continues to broadcast, streaming raw physical metrics directly to Erik Bard's receivers. The data retrieved from inside the core of the anomaly is astounding. As the rocket passes through the center of the distortion ring, the onboard magnetometers record a localized magnetic field collapse, dropping from standard terrestrial values to near absolute zero inside a pocket of space less than 20 feet wide. At the same exact instant, the thermal couplers register a localized temperature spike of over 40 degrees Celsius, occurring in mid-air with zero physical heat source present. Even more perplexing is the trajectory data captured by external optical radar units. As the rocket clears the top of the bubble, its flight path is no longer a smooth parabolic curve. The physical craft appears to have been deflected laterally by several degrees, pushed off its calculated flight line as if it had skipped off a physical, pressurized boundary suspended in the open sky. The rocket deploys its recovery parachute and drifts slowly back toward the sagebrush floor. But the data streaming into the command center has already accomplished its mission. The team didn't just measure an anomaly from a distance. They drove a physical instrument straight through a localized spatial and magnetic tear in the atmosphere. Standing beside the primary displays, the visiting intelligence advisors review the real-time flight telemetry with silent intensity. The physical reality of the bubble is no longer up for debate. It is an empirically proven, highly energetic phenomenon operating directly over American soil. The recovery team retrieves the scorched payload container from the sagebrush, carefully transferring the onboard flash memory modules directly into the command center's isolated analysis bay. Outside, the night air over the Uinta Basin remains heavy with the static residual of the launch, but inside the nerve center, the atmosphere has turned cool, clinical, and intensely focused. The data extracted from the rocket's hardened memory bank confirms what the ground sensors recorded in real time, but with an additional layer of precision that leaves no room for conventional explanation. As Erik Bard overlays the rocket's flight path metrics with the seismic records from the Mesa core drill, the spatial geometry of the property crystallizes into a unified model. The localized magnetic collapse down to absolute zero, the sudden 40-degree thermal spike, and the lateral mechanical deflection experienced by the rocket all occurred at the precise mathematical intersection where the convergent laser beams crossed the 1.6 GHz vector. The phenomenon is not behaving like an unguided natural anomaly or a random atmospheric static field. It exhibits the structural dynamics of a closed-loop system, an adaptive high-energy environment that actively redistributes kinetic, thermal, and electromagnetic energy across its perimeter to maintain equilibrium whenever external force is applied. For the visiting political figures and intelligence advisors, this physical proof elevates the investigation to an entirely new level of urgency. During a debriefing session following the launch, the conversation shifts from raw scientific collection to long-term strategic oversight. The U.S. Congressman reviews the flight telemetry alongside Dr. Travis Taylor, analyzing how an invisible localized boundary capable of deflecting physical objects and neutralizing electronics could affect aerospace technology and national defense infrastructure. The consensus emerging from the command center is definitive. The empirical evidence gathered at Skinwalker Ranch represents a leap in physics that demands rigorous, ongoing scientific evaluation at the highest levels. Recognizing the profound implications of these findings, Brandon Fugal commits the full resources of the scientific team to expanding the scope of the investigation. The field successes of Season 7, Episode 14 do not mark the end of the research. They serve as the baseline for a far more comprehensive operational strategy. To prepare for the next phase of discovery, the team outlines 3 critical directives: integrated subterranean imaging, deploying advanced muon tomography arrays and deep-penetrating passive seismic sensors around the Mesa to map the full 3-dimensional geometry of the buried ceramic metallic matrix without destroying the surrounding rock structure. Continuous multispectral airspace monitoring, establishing a permanent, high-frequency optical and electromagnetic tracking grid around the bubble to monitor real-time atmospheric shifts 24 hours a day, regardless of surface testing. Synchronized high-energy stimulation, executing coordinated, multi-point energy pulses across the triangle and the Mesa to map the exact latency and bandwidth of the 1.6 GHz communication network. As the briefing concludes and the Congressional delegation prepares to depart, the primary team stands outside near the launch pad, looking up at the quiet night sky over the Uinta Basin. The desert is peaceful once again, but the baseline monitors in the trailer continue to hum softly, recording the persistent low-amplitude pulse of the 1.6 GHz signal. The barriers between speculation, scientific theory, and hard physical reality have been permanently dissolved, setting the stage for what promises to be the most revelatory era in the history of Skinwalker Ranch. The conclusion of Episode 14 leaves an indelible mark on the landscape of modern scientific inquiry, delivering an emotional and intellectual payoff that resonates far beyond the perimeter fences of Skinwalker Ranch. What began generations ago as isolated whispered tales around campfires and later evolved into high-tech skywatching has finally matured into a rigorous, undeniable branch of advanced physics. The journey through Season 7 has systematically dismantled every conventional excuse, replacing doubt with hard, repeatable data etched into microchips, thermal sensors, and core samples. Standing together outside the command center as the dark desert horizon catches the first pale light of dawn, Dr. Travis Taylor, Erik Bard, Thomas Winterton, and Brandon Fugal represent a turning point in human curiosity. They have faced equipment destruction, physical exhaustion, localized radiation exposure, and relentless public skepticism. Yet their commitment to empirical truth has brought humanity to the doorstep of a profound revelation. We are sharing space with an intelligent, highly responsive force that operates seamlessly between the dirt beneath our boots and the sky above our heads. The ultimate revelation of Episode 14 lies not just in the individual anomalies, the impenetrable ceramic matrix deep inside the Mesa, the spatial boundary of the bubble, or the instantaneous 1.6 GHz data broadcasts. It lies in how these pieces fit together to form a grander picture. The ranch is an active laboratory, a living canvas where the boundaries of electromagnetic theory, gravity, and consciousness intersect. By bringing lawmakers and intelligence advisors directly into the nerve center, the team has successfully bridged the gap between fringe mystery and official acknowledgement, forever altering how institutional science views the unknown. As we look toward the future of the investigation, one philosophical truth remains undeniable. The pursuit of the unknown is the ultimate catalyst for human advancement. The mysteries locked within the Uinta Basin force us to ask bigger questions about our place in the universe, challenging our arrogance and inspiring us to push past the comfort zone of established knowledge. The doors of discovery have been kicked wide open, and what lies beyond will shape scientific exploration for generations to come. If this deep dive breakdown of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch Season 7 Episode 14 broadened your perspective, make sure to hit the like button to support the channel. Subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss an investigative breakdown, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. What do you believe is the true nature of the anomaly hidden inside the Mesa? Thank you for watching, and remember, keep searching for the truth and always stay curious.